Welcome to Satellite TV News. You're watching the News Hour with Angus Scott in London. It's Wednesday, the 17th of May. These are the main headlines from around the world. Has the much-anticipated Ukraine counteroffensive already begun? Fighting rages across all fronts as Zelensky builds up his armoury. AI executives unite in asking US regulators to control what they're developing. Myanmar cyclone death toll rises to at least 80 as reports from the devastated region filter in. Former French President Sarkozy to wear a tag as he loses his appeal for corruption. And has an antidote been found at last for the world's deadliest mushroom? Welcome to the News Hour. These are today's main stories in detail. As fighting rages and Kyiv relentlessly presses its allies for more military hardware, experts are now believing Ukraine's long-promised counteroffensive has potentially begun. Activity has stepped up along the front lines, seeking notably to pin Russia down and inflict maximum casualties around the flashpoint town of Bakhmut. Probing attacks have been launched on several Russian defensive positions, which are now believed to be in the early stages of a full counteroffensive, likely to involve multiple fronts, including operations to take back the parts of the Zaporizhia region it does not currently control. Analysts believe current fighting appears to be a phase of both sides using feints and games to deceive the other ahead of major operations. The chief executive of ChatGPT's OpenAI has told US lawmakers that regulating artificial intelligence was essential as lawmakers stress their deepest fears of AI's developments. As the global face of AI, Sam Altman has urged Congress to impose new rules on big tech, despite deep political divisions that for years have blocked legislation aimed at regulating the internet. Whilst he said generative AI will help address some of humanity's biggest challenges like climate change and curing cancer, he also warned it did pose inherent risks. This comes after former Google developer Geoffrey Hinton warned the world that AI was a genuine risk to humanity. The death toll in cyclone-hit Myanmar has risen to at least 81, as villagers tried to piece together ruined homes and waited for aid and support. Mocha made landfall on Sunday, causing devastation. At least 46 people died in Rakhine State, inhabited by the persecuted Rohingya Muslim minority, and 13 died when a monastery collapsed in north of Rakhine's capital Sittwe. Mocha was the most powerful cyclone to hit the area in more than a decade, churning up villages, uprooting trees and knocking out communications across much of the region. Former French President Nicolas Sarkozy has lost his appeal against a prison sentence for corruption. The 67-year-old was sentenced to 3 years in prison, including 2 suspended, for trying to influence a judge in a separate case. Sarkozy will serve his time at home wearing an electronic tag. Sarkozy was convicted of attempting to secure information about a case in 2014 by suggesting he could secure a prestigious job for the judge. He served one 5-year term as president from 2007 to 2012, and Sarkozy's conviction is a stunning fall from grace for a former president who once bestrode the world stage. It remains to be seen how his sentence will affect his political future. Floods caused by heavy rains in Italy's northern Emilia Romagna region have killed 3 people. 14 rivers have broken their banks across the region in the last 24 hours, and 23 towns are flooded. Authorities have said nearly 5,000 people have been evacuated, but the number might rise. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni tweeted her support for those affected and said the government was ready to intervene with the necessary aid. An arsonist may have ignited the hostel blaze that killed at least 6 people in New Zealand's capital, police have said, as they opened a homicide investigation. Smoke and flames engulfed the 92-room 4-storey Loafers Lodge in Wellington in the early hours of Tuesday, sending residents fleeing for their lives. Firefighters found 6 bodies inside the hostel, but said they were unable to search everywhere because the roof had partially collapsed on the top floor. As a result, police have said the death toll may rise. The UN has warned that Africa's Sahel region has become a dangerous hotbed for violent extremism. But the joint force set up in 2014 to combat groups linked to the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda and others has failed to stop their growth, and now warns the instability will expand towards West African coastal countries.
Resolute advances in the fight against terrorism, violent extremism and organized crime in the Sahel desperately need to be made. Without significant gains, it will become increasingly difficult to reverse the security trajectory in the Sahel and the further expansion of insecurity towards coastal West African countries. Recent instability in the east of the Sahel, in the Sudan, is yet one additional cause for concern. The devastating effects of the continuing destabilization of the Sahel would be felt far beyond the region and the African continent.
With France moving its counter-terrorism force from Mali to Niger due to tensions with the junta, and Mali's decision to allow the Russian Wagner mercenaries, currently fighting in Ukraine, to deploy in its territory, this has led to large-scale civilian casualties and reports of human rights violations. Singapore has hanged a man this morning for drug trafficking in the city-state's second execution in 3 weeks. The man was convicted in 2019 of trafficking around 1.5 kilos of cannabis. Singapore has some of the world's toughest anti-narcotics laws. Trafficking more than 500 grams of cannabis can result in the death penalty. Despite growing international calls to abolish the death penalty, Singapore insists that it is an effective deterrent against trafficking. And finally, researchers have claimed that an already widely used medical dye reduces the poisonous effects of the world's deadliest mushroom, the death cap, in what it hopes is the first targeted antidote. Aminata phalloides, commonly known as death caps, are estimated to cause more than 90% of all deaths from mushroom poisoning worldwide. Eating just half of one can cause deadly failure of the liver or kidneys. The treatment has worked on mice, and the Chinese researchers now intend to conduct trials on humans, and if successful, could save many lives. The team had previously used the same technology to find a potential antidote for the box jellyfish, one of the world's most venomous animals. And those were some of today's main news headlines from around the world. You've been watching the News Hour on Satellite TV, and you can find more stories in detail on our channel Satnet News. So it is worth clicking on that subscribe button to make sure you get to see stories as they're broadcast. And don't forget, if you have any comments or opinions on any of our news stories, you can comment below, or indeed drop us a direct message at message@satellitetv.com, and we'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, thanks for watching. For Satellite TV News, I'm Angus Scott in London.